I felt absolutely helpless and frightened. Mark was being very courageous. He was a very strong man, and he was a big man. So it was really hard for me to try and manage that pain. He was beginning to become a little bit confused and disorientated as well. So it was a very, very upsetting time for both of us. And I was trying to be strong for Mark. Mark was trying to be strong for me. And we needed some help. Mark had a fall, and he was unable to remember how to do things. It could have been the medication, but I think it was the condition. The cancer was spreading pretty quickly. And the paramedics were very helpful when Mark fell, but they couldn't advise on the pain relief. So coming to the hospice was the only light at the end of the tunnel for us at that point. Mark was worried about coming to the hospice because he thought that meant it was coming towards the end, and he wanted to be strong and stay at home. But we talked about it, and he realised that actually it was a positive to come to the hospice and get the pain managed so that he could start to take control back. When we got to the hospice in the early hours of the morning, the welcome was just unbelievable. Both of us just felt so relieved, so safe, and so loved. And that was just walking through these doors. It had been a terrible, terrible experience for us both at home. Things were out of control, and the hospice just made it all better. When Mark came into the hospice, he had his own room, and it had a beautiful French doors out into the courtyard. And Mark loved gardening, so that was great for him. It was important to Mark. Mark talked about coming back to the hospice as a volunteer to help in the gardens, and the nurses were very keen for Mark to get out into the garden when he was able. And on one particular day, Mark wasn't feeling too well, so the nursing staff moved Mark's bed to the French doors so that he could see the garden, and he could feel the fresh air and all the things that were really important to him. On another day, one of Mark's friends came from work, and they loved Mark at work because he was such a nice person. And we had afternoon tea outside. So the nursing staff had made a big effort and got a tray ready for us, and it was a lovely day, a lovely afternoon. And when Mark first came into the hospice after a few days, I'd explained that Mark had been sleeping downstairs in the dining room, obviously, on a bed, and I'd got a put-up bed at the side of him, so we were together, but we hadn't actually shared a bed for quite some time because of Mark's pain and the logistics of that. And so all the nursing staff put their heads together to work out how they could make a double bed in Mark's room. And it became logistically quite difficult with the bed sides and various other things. So it was quite funny. It went on for hours, people popping in with different ideas about how I wouldn't fall down the middle. But that night we shared a bed for the first time in months, and that was a lovely memory and a lovely feeling. My husband Mark was diagnosed with malignant melanoma when he was 47. It was a huge, huge shock to us both, and a really frightening time. We first came into contact with the hospice when Mark started to develop a lymphoma, so he had a swelling in his arm. But we managed to get an outpatient's appointment at the hospice and saw the lymphoma nurses, who were absolutely fantastic. And they gave Mark a lot of exercises to do, and I was able to do some of the lymphoma exercises with him and for him. And that was a real boon. So both Mark and I felt much more in control of that particular condition. As time went on, Mark's melanoma spread to his brain, and we needed the hospice in a different way then, and that was to help manage his pain. We came as an emergency to the outpatients department to see the consultant here, and she was so lovely to us. We were both really frightened, and Mark had had some falls, and we'd had the ambulance out, and it was just horrible. But when we'd seen the consultant, we knew that things could only get better. She arranged for Mark to be admitted to the hospice to try and manage his pain, and that made a massive difference to us. We were both really scared, but as soon as we came into the hospice, we felt safe. People understood exactly what the difficulties were for us. They helped Mark come to terms with what was happening, helped me come to terms with what was happening, and we just became part of the team. They asked me about how I wanted Mark to be cared for, what I could do to help. They included me completely in Mark's care, and that's exactly what I wanted. So on the Friday afternoon, Mark and I had visited the hospice. We'd had some real difficulties. Mark was in so much pain. The cancer had spread to his spinal cord by this point, and he had a tumour on multiple tumours on his spinal cord. So any sort of movement, getting in and out of the car was just horrendous for him. So we came to the outpatients on the Friday, and the consultant was able to advise about pain management. And when we got home, Mark was in a great deal of pain. He couldn't sit, he couldn't lie. It was difficult for him to even stand up and get a particularly comfortable position. When Mark came into the hospice, we didn't know what to expect. We didn't know how quickly his pain could be managed. We'd struggled at home, we'd tried everything, a lot of controlled drugs and a mixture of all sorts of things, and nothing was working to help him. When we came into the hospice, Mark walked into the hospice because he didn't want to appear to be causing anybody any difficulty, because that was Mark's way. It soon became apparent that the pain was awful for him. He couldn't sit, he couldn't stand. The nursing staff supported Mark to get into bed, and it was just impossible. He couldn't move to get into bed. After a few days and looking at different types of medication, assessing Mark every day, every few hours, the nursing staff began to develop a regime that was working for Mark. Mark actually walked around the grounds with me and walked to the car, and it was a fantastic change to see him back to himself, see him being able to do things for himself again, which was so important. Mark was a very fit man and loved to exercise and potter around. He was a great golfer, and so walking around the grounds was a massive breakthrough for him, feeling that he was back in control. So the pain management, after a few days, the difference was incredible. And we couldn't do that at home. We really couldn't do that at home. So for that period, Mark had part of himself back, and he was able to do the things that were important to him. The shock of Mark's cancer and the way that it advanced so quickly was devastating to us both. We were both trying to be strong for each other, and Mark wanted to be positive and didn't feel able to talk to me about his cancer, which I fully understand, because we would have both just broken down. But I needed to talk to somebody about Mark's cancer because I was frightened. The family support team here at the hospice came to help me and supported me to understand that how I felt was the way that I should feel, that I was frightened and I feared the worst. By talking to somebody and feeling that people understood how I was feeling, I was able to give positive, good, quality time to Mark. And that was all I ever wanted, because that's what he deserved. So the family support team enabled me to spend the last weeks with Mark and not break down, but break down when it was the right thing to do. I felt as though they really, really cared about me and about Mark, and they fully understood the pain and the fear for both of us. They supported Mark massively, emotionally. He saw the psychologist, and the chaplain used to visit Mark regularly. But it wasn't negative, it wasn't something to be afraid of. It was all kindness and positive support, and enabling us both to say exactly how we felt and just listening. And that made a huge difference.